All right, what's going on, team? Welcome back to the Fireside PM Podcast. I've got a 2x2 for you all. I know how much people love 2x2s. I do as well. This one kind of reflects how a lot of founders and investors think about whether or not an idea is backable. Having now looked at several hundred pitches this year, and written a bunch of checks, as well as explored ideas of my own and started companies in the past, I noticed that there are generally two kind of axes that you want to think about when you're evaluating whether or not you want to pursue an idea, or for me, sometimes when I'm on the other side of the table, whether or not I want to back a founder. On the vertical axis, you have the customer problem, and a lot of people talk about this as like you want to build painkillers, not vitamins. And, it is amazing how we all know this. This is not like new research yet. It is very common for people to spend a lot of time on vitamin solutions. Myself included. Sometimes you just kind of fall in love with a novel idea, and the novelty of the idea somehow blinds you to the fact that, is this really like a huge problem for people? And, I think part of it also is that there aren't that many huge problems. There's a lot of small problems. And so probability-wise, you're more likely to kind of find yourself working on a small problem. And then, of course, on the bottom of this vertical axis, you have the not a problem at all. And that's just, in some ways, that's even better than the vitamin zone. The vitamin zone is kind of like, for those of you who remember back in your dating days, maybe you're still in that mode, like sometimes you get stuck in the friend zone. We've all been there. It's not fun. Unless you want to be in the friend zone. But as a founder, you don't want to be in the vitamin zone. You want to be in the cursable problem zone. And when I say cursable problem, I mean these are types of problems that people will literally use the F word for. So they might be like, oh, it is so effing hard to deal with taxis and calling these freaking numbers and the dispatch saying the car's on the way and then the driver doesn't know where you are. And now we all take it for granted. You just open an app, push a button, and they show up. But it wasn't always like that. Or if it's like, oh, I've got this big event, all the hotels are booked, now I've got nowhere to stay, what the hell am I going to do? And now you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to fire up, Airbnb and find a little studio apartment that I can rent that's got great reviews. Or another cursable problem like with Zoom. It's like, oh man, these telephone bridges are just painful and people aren't paying attention. I can't see the slides, and WebEx is too complicated or whatever. And then boom, you get a Zoom link and here you are. So you want to solve a cursable problem. I'll give you an example of the vitamin zone, which is like, if someone said, hey, I have a product that makes it so that you can build like a portfolio of your work a little better, or it'll make it look a little nicer, or it'll be more mobile friendly. It's like, yeah, that's good. But the alternatives that already exist might be good enough. And then the not a problem is like, oh, I'm going to build this feature or this product that, looks back on previous meetings using Gen AI to extract themes from across multiple months of meetings. It's like, well, is that like the biggest issue facing organizations these days? I get why I haven't seen that exist in the world before, but maybe there's a reason for that. So a good litmus test is, are people already doing this using manual workarounds? And if the answer is yes, then it generally means like, well, it's a big enough problem for people to do all of these like 10 steps of manual kludgy work. And if I could build software to make it happen in one click, then it is a problem worth solving. So that vertical axis is all about, are we solving a huge effing problem? Then the horizontal axis is, how are people solving the problem today? All the way on the right-hand side, which would be amazing, is you're like, oh, you know what? This problem is being horribly solved by the incumbents. And the reason is these incumbents have some perverse incentives where they're just not going to get rewarded to solve the problem in a satisfying way for customers. And therefore, this creates a big opportunity for a new entrant. The middle ground is, well, you can kind of solve it. There's some workarounds. There's a little bit of like copying and pasting or tabbing around a few different apps, but you can kind of make it work. That's interesting. And then the worst is all the way on the left-hand side, which is like, the incumbent already is solving this, and they have recently shipped or already have or are about to ship a very solid offering that's just going to be good enough. And it means that there's no real need for someone to think about taking a leap of faith on some unknown startup that just raised a few $1,000,000. So that's kind of like an orientation of the axes. You've got the vertical axis, how big is the problem, and the horizontal axis, how well solved is this problem by current solutions. I cannot tell you how much time founders and product managers spend on the solution and not thinking about the problem, or not thinking about the fact that, you know what, your target users, your ICP, they have many other options, and they don't live in this vacuum where it's just them, living in a cave with rocks and sticks and then your amazing app. They have plenty of other technology solutions available to them that are already installed, that they know backwards and forwards, that if it's a B2B thing, have already been approved by their company, where they already have a contract with it, where they're already spending money on it. So you really got to think about that. That horizontal axis is actually just as dangerous to ignore as the vertical axis. Let's look at some examples of where I've seen some people land. And, let's be fair to everybody listening. If you've not been in the top right corner, like, join the freaking club. Most really smart founders and PMs find themselves drifting left or down, or even starting in the bottom left, because, they usually get seduced by technology, and they're like, oh, I could do this, and this hasn't been done before. And the fact that it hasn't been done before means it must be a new venture. And, there are a lot of things that haven't been done before that should never be done. So, in some ways, if you're in this bottom left corner, congratulations, because this is actually, if you're not going to be in the top right corner, this is the best place to be. This is a fast fail. We are not solving a real problem. And in fact, even if it were a problem, like, all of the alternatives are solid at achieving this task. You will see clear market signals that no one's signing up, nobody's interested in it, they won't even talk to you for, UXR, and you won't make any money, you'll get no traction, and congratulations, you're testing and learning, and time to move on. So, southwest quadrant, big thumbs up. These are great. Southeast quadrant, which is not a problem, but really, really hard for incumbents to solve. These are like science projects. These are like, oh, nobody has ever done this before, and wouldn't it be good to solve this technical challenge? And, I don't love this space, but at least the market will tell you pretty quickly. You could just look at number of users, and people will say, well, I don't have time to solve this problem that doesn't exist. But this is more common in either academic or R&D efforts where it's like so indexed on novelty and maybe technical complexity that it gets conflated with, addressable market or actual venture kind of backability. Let's look at another one. This is a problem. It's a very big problem. Unfortunately, it's solved. So if you're like, I want to build something that helps people, whatever, find the lowest price offering for a product that I know I want to buy. It's like, well, there's like 1 million shopping search engines out there. And, unless you're solving it in a fundamentally different way, that's way, way better. Like you are in yes, this is a problem, and yes, other people are solving it, and they've got momentum and resources. So, it's a bit of a crowded space solving a real problem. Good example of this one would be, there's a lot of AI recruiting, AI HR tech, super crowded. Now, if you've got a really novel approach and you've got a great team, it still might work. But if you're like, hey, I'm going to use AI to help people evaluate candidates better or help them process resume applications more quickly. Like there's a startup every other block in Palo Alto working on this problem. So, it's not only are incumbents solving it, I'm sure, every applicant tracking system company that has like a PM has an OKR on using AI to screen candidates. But then you've got a crap load of startups all kind of amassed around this area. So good job. You found a big problem, but it's kind of already being solved. Again, maybe asterisk there, which is like if your solve is really, really different and produces, double, triple, 10x better results than the current alternatives, okay, then it might be all right to go into a crowded space. But if you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to use the OpenAI API and then I'm going to, try and summarize a bunch of stuff and, highlight the most credible applications based on interpretation of the job description. Like, I don't know. I think everybody's got that feature now. Okay, this is the worst area, this middle area. It's kind of the friend zone times 2. So you're kind of solving a problem. It's not cursable, but it's not obviously not a problem. And you've got an approach that's kind of different, but it's not, disruptively different. And then therefore you're getting some action, you're getting some interest, you're getting some design partners. Maybe someone's putting a little bit of money down. Oh my God. This middle area, it's like a bad relationship that doesn't end, but doesn't go anywhere at the same time. You know what I mean? Where it's like, for those of you managers out there, you got an employee, they're kind of barely meeting expectations, but it's not an obvious PIP, but they're definitely not killing it. You could spend years in that middle zone. And then, of course, let's end with a happy scenario, which is, oh my God, we are solving a freaking huge problem. Huge. People curse about it. They waste a lot of money. They spend a lot of money trying to solve it. They can't solve it. ROI is amazing if you can solve it. And the people or the vendors or the companies that should be solving it, they're trying, but because of their technical debt or their product debt or their legacy customer debt or whatever, they're not able to solve it in this very unique way that you've come up with, ideally because of the emergence of some new technology or new data or some new approach that wasn't possible 5 years ago. And for the incumbents to even copy you, they would have to stab themselves in the knee and, jeopardize their current business. That's beautiful. That can potentially describe ChatGPT, where it's like, wow, if you're Google, you're really torn a little bit on, man, I've got this $1 trillion search business, and now I have to think about what to do with do I eat myself and kind of cannibalize my own business? So it's a really hard call to make, and that's beautiful for a startup. So let's summarize here. If you're thinking about starting a new company, or if you're a PM that's thinking about shipping, next year's big feature, make sure it's a really cursable problem, and make sure that your competitors aren't already solving it good enough, and that you're really doing it in a really new way to breathe life into your existing product. So if you're just an entrepreneurial PM, or if you're a founder, I think this 2x2 works. And the size of the circles kind of indicates the potential outcomes for you. And some of these have 2 circles where it starts out as like a decent sized orange one and then turns red. That happens oftentimes. And then, the jackpot ones, they may not start out as a jackpot, but you're kind of like probing around. It's the little yellow circle. And then you're like, ooh, I think I'm narrowing it down further. And then, ooh, now I found a way to scale it. And you're off to the races. If you are in the top right corner, contact me. I would love to write you a check or be an advisor in your early days of your startup. And then if you're in another part of this chart and you want a product coach or some consulting, reach out. Happy to see if I could be of service to you. So with that, I'm going to say, let's get back to work. Bye, PMs.